Hey everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here, and this time around, let's fire off 10 more rapid-fire tips for wildlife photographers. Last time, we focused more on the tech side. In this video, we'll focus more on compositional and artistic elements. Now, if you missed that first video, you can still access it by clicking the card above, or you can get the link below this video in the description area on YouTube. Also, note that since we're talking compositional considerations in this video, these guidelines certainly won't apply across the board. There are absolutely exceptions to every rule. By the way, if you want to make sure you never miss any of my videos or articles, be sure to sign up for my free email newsletter at my site. I only send it occasionally, so I'm not going to fill your inbox with junk, but I do a lot more than videos, and the easiest way to get access to that information is through that free email newsletter. So let's get started. As with the other video, these are not in any particular order of importance, so here we go. Tip number 1, catch the catchlights. Catchlights are one of those little details that can make or break a photo, especially if the animal has dark or black eyes. My technique in the field is to always watch for catchlights before I pop the shutter. Now, unless the animal is really tiny in the frame, most of the time it's very easy to spot a catchlight right from the viewfinder when you're looking at your subject. And I always try to wait until I see that catchlight before I shoot. Note that sometimes you may need to pick a different location though if the eye is in the shadow and you're not seeing a catchlight, so you have to kind of consider that when you're trying to position yourself. Also, I find I can skip the catchlight in colored eyes far more readily than dark or black eyes. The guideline goes like this. The darker the eye, the more critical it is that you see that little twinkle in it. The bottom line is that although a catchlight isn't always mandatory for a great shot, almost any wildlife image goes up a notch when you can manage to capture it. Tip number 2, consider your height. Should you shoot above, below, or right at eye level? It really depends on the story you want to tell. When you shoot from above, the viewer feels like they are dominating the animal a little bit, and that's usually not the kind of feeling or message we're trying to evoke with our wildlife photography, but there are times it works. Take this little chipmunk, for instance. He was literally begging for a handout, and I thought a higher perspective played well into that story. However, this usually isn't the case. Next is eye level, which puts the viewer and the subject on equal ground, and it often feels more intimate. This is my usual default, and I like the connection it creates with the animal. Eye level shots really bring the viewer right into the animal's world. Now, on the other hand, when you shoot up towards the animal, it can have a feeling like the animal is dominating the viewer and is useful if you want the viewer to maybe feel a little bit intimidated by your subject. Note that most of the time I'm not doing this to an extreme though. Just a little upwards view is what I like. For the most part, I tend to favor eye-level shots because they create a strong connection to the animal. However, shots where I'm looking up towards the animal are really a close second. I seldom shoot down on an animal since it compositionally robs all the power from the animal and tends to kind of diminish its importance. As a side note, I also favor both eye level and shooting upward a bit when dealing with predators or dangerous animals. To me, part of the story with those animals is often their intimidation factor, and choosing the proper perspective, the proper height, can really enhance that feeling. Also, I can almost hear the objections to this tip, especially if getting to eye level involves crawling around on the ground. I know, I hear it all the time, getting down isn't the hard part, it's getting back up. If you can't get low, one trick that can work well is to back up and use longer glass. The closer you are to your subject, the more it feels like you're shooting down on it. Instead, do your best to get back farther and use longer glass. It's not a perfect solution, but it's often an improvement to shooting at close range from a standing position and can make it look like you are much lower than you really were. Tip number 3, work the light. Wildlife photographers seem to instinctively position themselves for front-lit shots, basically pointing their shadow at the subject. While that certainly works, keep in mind that towards the edges of day, light becomes more manageable, so backlight and sidelight should also be a consideration and often provide a more compelling version of the image. I generally try for backlighting during the first and last 20, maybe even 30 minutes of the day if the sky is clear, longer if there's a bit of haze or clouds diffusing that light. The light is generally not harsh at that time of day, making backlight far more manageable. Plus, backlight also takes rim light along for the ride. Sure, you can't always position yourself for it, but when you can, it is like magic. From a technical standpoint, meter so you're just at the edge of blowing those highlights and keep the ISO as low as possible so you can brighten your backlit subject as needed in post without things getting too terribly noisy on you. For side light, I'll usually utilize it during the first 45 minutes after sunrise or during the last 45 minutes before sunset. And again, clouds can make that go a little longer. I find side light provides interesting depth and dimension that is tougher to get with just flat frontal light. It often sculpts the subjects and can really create an interesting image, in my opinion. Of course, you seldom have like perfect backlight or perfect side light. Usually it's somewhere in between, and then you know what? That's totally fine and still provides tons of depth and interest. So when the light is low and manageable, take full advantage when you position yourself for your wall hanger. Tip number 4, put great backgrounds behind your subject. Backgrounds make or break photos. In fact, if you only remember one statement from the video, I hope it's that one. The key to a good background is that it should complement and showcase your subject without drawing attention to itself. I aim for clean, distant backgrounds most of the time, and I try to avoid busy backgrounds directly behind my target. Now, close, busy backgrounds are always going to be a distraction, and they tend to compete for the viewer's attention. Now, on the other hand, however, close backgrounds that are not busy can work well, and this lion right here is a great example of that. For me, I like a terrestrial background that subtly says a little something about the subject's habitat without taking attention away from the animal. You'll see the kind of backgrounds I prefer throughout this video. Often getting a good background is as simple as carefully positioning yourself as you approach your target. Whenever I'm approaching a subject, I'm looking at 3 things: the subject itself, the direction and quality of light, and the background. As I'm moving into position, I try to maneuver for the best possible background, looking for more distant areas that will render nicely when out of focus. I'm looking at color, I'm looking at brightness, I'm watching for potential distractions, and I'm thinking about how the subject is going to look against all of that. This little bee eater is a great example of what I look for in a background. It's far enough behind him that it's nicely out of focus and not distracting, yet you can still tell that it's compromised of reeds and grasses, giving a nice notion of the bird's habitat. Tip number 5, watch for white spots in the background. Speaking of backgrounds, one of the worst background mistakes you can make is allowing bright white spots to creep into that background. Our eyes are naturally attracted to bright areas, and if you have a photo with bright patches, that's where your viewer's eyes are going to go. So the advice here is simple. Do everything in your power to position yourself so you don't have any bright white patches that will steal your viewer's attention away from the subject. This frequently happens when bright white sky is poking through leaves or vegetation, but keep in mind that bright white branches or highly reflective vegetation can also cause distracting bright areas in the frame. Thankfully, repositioning yourself is often all that's required to fix this issue. Sometimes just a step one way or another can make a dramatic difference in the background and hide those white patches. Also, keep in mind we're talking about patches of bright white, not something like a white sky making up the background of a high-key photo. Stuff like that is perfectly fine. Tip number 6, avoid chunks of another animal in the frame. Speaking of distractions, keep an eye out for distracting pieces of another animal in the frame. Nothing ruins an epic shot of a wildlife subject like a stray rear end of another animal in the corner of your frame. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you can't have another animal in the frame, even an out-of-focus one, but that animal should add to the story and not be a distraction. This shot of an African skimmer chick with the mom in the background is a good example of where having another animal in the frame can work really well. The bottom line is that if you're going to have another animal in the frame, that it's done purposefully and not on accident. Tip number 7, you don't need the entire animal. One of the most common things I teach in my workshops is that you don't need to see the entire animal to create a winning shot. Too often, people skip a photo if they can't see the entire animal in the frame, and honestly, that's too bad. The thing is, most of us aren't shooting field guides. We're trying for interesting, storytelling photos that people won't forget 30 seconds after they see them. In fact, some of my best shots feature only a small portion of the animal and leave the rest to the imagination. So don't worry too much if you don't have the entire animal in the frame. It's often where some of the most interesting images come from. In fact, animals peeking around corners or through branches are among my favorites and have been some of my most popular. Of course, this isn't a license to cut an animal off at odd places or rationalize an image where you chopped off the feet, but I think you get the idea. Tip number 8, go really close or really wide. On occasion, you may be closer to an animal than you may expect. When that happens, you have 3 choices. Go for a normal-looking shot with a somewhat shorter than normal focal length, use a long lens for an extreme close-up, or go for a really wide environmental shot. The first option is what most people go for, but the truth is that route is a bit of a wasted opportunity. When I'm close to an animal, I often keep using a really long focal length, sometimes even adding a TC for a really extreme close-up. It's a different approach that's often more interesting and kind of goes back to what we were just saying in the last tip about not needing the entire animal in the frame. The other option is to get even closer if it's possible to do it in a safe way and go like really wide, as I did with this elephant. This is a tougher shot, and I have to admit I usually don't get the pieces to fall into place for a shot like this as often as I'd like, but I tell you what, when it happens, it can be magic. Either way, going wider or longer than normal can often yield a more interesting shot, and it's definitely something you should start exploring if you're not doing it already. Tip number 9, try to get ahead of the animal. One technique you'll find experienced wildlife photographers using is getting in front of an animal when possible and letting it come to them. Animals traveling in the general direction of the photographer are almost always more engaging than animals that look like they're kind of moving off. Whenever I'm dealing with an animal on the move, I do everything in my power to get into a position where the animal is coming towards me. Of course, depending on the level of habituation, this is easier said than done. Still, it's worth putting in the effort and often yields a very compelling image. As a side note, keep an eye on the animal's eyes. They often look in the direction they intend to go. Tip number 10, keep your eye on the prize. One of the best paths to a truly unique shot is becoming good at capturing peak moments, expressions, and poses. Too often, photographers don't keep their eye to the viewfinder and miss the best moment of a given opportunity. Train yourself to always keep an eye to the viewfinder when your subject is in view. I can't tell you the number of shots I've personally missed and have watched others miss because we weren't keeping our eye where it belongs. The thing is, the more time you spend with your eye to the viewfinder, the more great shots you'll capture, and that means you need to do everything in your power to stay visually locked onto the scene. One tip is that most of the time we look away due to fatigue, usually because we're hand-holding and our arms are starting to turn to jello. I find using a tripod not only helps my keeper rate from a sharpness and ISO standpoint, but it also allows me to stay glued to my subject when I have to wait a prolonged period of time. If you like these tips, they really are only the smallest slice of what you'll discover in my educational materials. Each of my ebooks and video workshops are jam-packed with tips and techniques that can help any photographer take their images to the next level. Make sure you check them out. The books not only discuss the technical aspects, but also how, why, and when to use the various techniques they describe. Again, make sure you stop by the site and sign up for that free email newsletter so you never miss one of my videos, workshops, ebook offers. I have all sorts of stuff that goes out in those. Definitely want to sign up for that email newsletter. Also, make sure you check out the BCG Forums if you have a photography question. Lots of great people over there who are super willing to help and super knowledgeable. And finally, and as always, make sure you like, subscribe, and get notified. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.